Good morning, everybody. And it is time for another 3 a.m. rant. So, today, literally today, the Supreme Court decided to remove the last vestige of the Voting Rights Amendment. I'm sure that there's a lot of people out there making comments, but I'm just going to add this to the fray, if you will. I want to first congratulate the conservative Republicans, because ever since 1964 and 1965, those couple of years where voter rights were established, ever since then, white people, conservative Republicans, have been doing all they could to erase that. All they could. It's been a slow, consistent battle with a very, very clear focus on trying to repeal. Now, you can say that it's been that conservatives were part of ratifying it again and again and again, and this is precedent, and it's all because of Donald Trump. It's because of Donald Trump and his cronies. No. That was inevitable. This was inevitable. The time, the years, the decades. I mean, I was born in 1963. When this stuff was finally ratified and when equality was being codified into the Constitution to a certain extent. White Republicans, and I would say to a certain extent even white liberals, reacted with vehemence, anger, and resentment. That's the truth of it. And you can't tell me that it isn't, because I also, born in that year, remember when me and my parents moved into a upper middle class neighborhood. In this area is Clifton Park. And did I have people burn flags or anything like that? No, not really. No, that didn't happen. But I remember there was a really nice public pool there. I remember going to that pool, and I remember when that pool shut down. I remember a lot of things. I remember the resentment, even in the other kids in school. Resentment towards busing, resentment towards affirmative action, resentment towards all these things, not because they were bad ideas, not because, well, they're doing it wrong. I mean, I'm all about equality, but that's just the wrong way. No. Those aren't the things that I heard. Those aren't the things that white people were really saying. That's not what white people were really thinking. You talk about a government that's been divided. The government was not divided until this happened. You have to understand that when affirmative action, when black people, when we gained the right to enter public spaces, white people shut those spaces down. When we had the right to run for offices, and because most of those were Democratic, Republicans tried to shut those down. When we went into the schools had various levels of anger and hatred. When we could finally get jobs that were supposed to be white jobs, what do white people do? Well, this is just underqualified black people, and who's to say that we were underqualified? Who would automatically, even that blanket statement is racist. But this is the kind of thing that white people have been despising ever since it happened. So the one thing that I can say about the conservative Republican Party is that they really have been a lot more honest than liberal Democrats. They've been honest because they wanted these things shut down. They wanted racism. They wanted white supremacy. All of those things, all of those gains, all those things that made this country, quote unquote, live up to its promise of equality and everything like that. All those things that everybody says it's about freedom and about justice. Never has been. And this is the final statement. I mean, that's why we can have a Supreme Court, and that's why we have a Donald Trump, and that's why we have conservative Republicans in both branches, in the House as well as the Senate. That's why this stuff is happening. And I really believe that even though a lot of white people said that it's about the economy, that it's never been about the economy. You see, the economy is something that both liberal whites and conservative whites can agree on, that it's about the economy. And so when you put these things under the guise of it being about the economy, they can do what they want to do without ever actually honestly saying, we're doing this because we're white supremacists and we want our white supremacy to be held intact. Even when you look at the things that are ignored. And what do I mean by ignored? Let's look at, we celebrate Juneteenth. Every June, it's going to be coming up soon. We're heading towards June. And we celebrate Juneteenth, and there's arts organizations and various different kinds of things. And the celebration of this was the last people that heard the great news. The great news. I should go back to that great news because it's a biblical thing too. There's great news about being freed from the slaves, from slavery. But how did white people react? White people reacted, and I say white people in general, not just Southern whites. White people reacted by birthing the KKK. White people reacted with movies like Birth of a Nation. White people I can't say that they went on a killing spree because that preceded it during slavery and continued during Reconstruction and continued after Reconstruction was ended. That was still in the 1800s. It didn't take as long to put an end to Reconstruction. It took a little bit longer. It took my lifetime to get rid of African American rights, the rights of people of color to do things like vote, right? It took a little longer for that to happen, but it still happened. It still happened within a single lifetime, my lifetime. But yeah, you had the birth of the KKK. When you look at the TV shows, if you look at the advertisements, if you look at every last part of American culture, white culture, you will see very, very clearly the anger and resentment. And from that point until now, there was this practice of murdering black people. Legalized murder of black people. Whether it was whole little areas or whole towns like Tulsa, Oklahoma. And that's just one example. That is one of many, many examples of whole neighborhoods, whole towns, bombed, burned, black people en masse murdered. The textbook definition of ethnic cleansing in little towns and little hamlets and little areas all over the United States were lynching, which I call murder, because to this day, I don't know that there is any record of a black person surviving being lynched. And I also know that there is no record of any white person being, quote unquote, brought to justice. it was a sport for white people. It was something that they just could do with absolute impunity. And that started with the KKK in the late 1800s and has continued all the way up until George Floyd, Breonna Taylor. This is common for white people. This is what white people do. This is who white people are. And I know there's liberal white people who say, well, we don't really stand for that. That's not what America stands for. Well, I'm sorry, but I'm a therapist. I don't judge people by what they say. I judge people by what they do. And when people do things that are destructive, I take a look at why are they doing these things? Whether it's outwardly destructive towards other people or inwardly destructive, where they are destroying themselves. My job is to help people find the kind of thoughts, cognitive behavioral therapy, okay? The kind of thoughts that inform the behaviors. That's the job. And then to challenge those thoughts and to help a person, to provide a person with a safe space that they could say, maybe it's my thinking that's the problem. Maybe if I address what's going on between my ears, no matter who taught me that, no matter the fact that this is something that I've been taught about myself and other people since literally like the day I was born, and maybe I need to challenge that. Maybe I need to change that thought. And in changing that thought, I start to change my behavior. And as I change my behavior, my life actually improves. I feel better about myself. I feel better about other people. And instead of being driven by fear and hate, I can be driven by love and hope. That happens. I've seen it happen. Not always because we're addressing racism. I don't have the time or the energy to address racism, because if I did, I would no longer be a therapist. It's interesting. We all know that race, the concept of race, is a delusion. It's delusional. There's no such thing. It was delusional when it was first written in the Bible, the Hamitic hypothesis. It was delusional when the first scientists during the Renaissance codified it in a hierarchical pattern or hierarchical thing, that's whatever the hell that was, that established the idea of race in the first place. That was delusional. There's no need for it. There was a profit gained by it. There was a justification gleaned from it. Manifest destiny, white supremacy, all those things, and everything connected to it. But this is delusional. There is absolutely no scientific basis for anything that has anything to do with that. There's no scientific basis to say that the Jews have a right to the state of Israel. There was no basis for the Jews to have to deal with the Holocaust. There was no basis for the extermination of Native Americans, enslavement of Africans, and the thorough European agenda of taking all the world's resources, including other humans, the earth itself, and turning it into something that could enrich themselves. Why do you think that the Vatican is covered in gold? Because it's a part of it. They were the first CIA, the first ones to go into other areas and subvert the populace, destroy the basis of the culture and implant another culture that created things like poverty and then patted its back for saving people from poverty. This is old, this is huge, and we're seeing it acting out right now. It's just the same old stuff. 2,000 years of white supremacist thought, literally. And at this point, it's really funny because it's not only white people that are a part of this. Even when they call themselves liberal, they're still a part of it. And now you have people, black people, other people of color, who believe that they are the supremacists now, who believe that they are in those white spaces, therefore they have been saved, that they have what they need, that they've got this. You got nothing. You got nothing. You never did. You really never did. Why do things look the way they do? Look at the constructs. Look at the racism that is in the Constitution itself. The New Deal. Signed, what, in the 20s or something like that? FDR. Look at the green zones and the blue zones, right? You can have a house with no money down, by law. You can have a house that was going to be equal to or less than whatever you were paying for rent. Law number 2, or section 2, you might want to call it. And then, no foreigners or Negroes will be able to receive these loans. Number 3. But the suburbs are all white because white people worked hard. You got no money down, free. You've got equal to or less than whatever you were paying for an apartment, free. And you have ownership of this house, this little plot of land, and every last economic advantage that gives to you for free. And somehow you forget. You can talk about redlining and red zones all you damn well want to, but for some reason you forget about the no foreigners or Negroes will be able to get these loans, and yet it's written right into the freaking legislation. Where the liberals with that? Where the white liberals? See, that was okay for white liberals. You didn't mind us working at McDonald's, in hotels. You didn't mind us, being able to go and do certain things. That was fine. Some of you even were like, I think it's okay for them to come into our schools. But look at that. Even look at that statement. I think it's okay for them to come into our schools. I think it's okay for them to join our unions. I think this stuff is okay. As if it really was supposed to be your freaking decision. Even that is white supremacy. Even that is white supremacy. I think in the first video, this is 3 a.m. rant number 2. But in my first one, I think I covered some of this stuff. I talked a little bit about it, but now it's come to like this really, really clear space where, yeah. So I don't want to hear white people running around here talking about how this is terrible. You've always talked about how this is terrible. But you never really wanted to change the nature of your own neighborhoods, did you? I mean, I've met white people who moved up to this area and who will say, I really wish that it was more integrated. I really don't like the idea. I mean, I come from New York City and I miss having more people of color around. This is so white bread up here in the Capital District. And they're right. But they don't move out, do they? They don't move and take their wealth and everything and move it to a different area to invest in an area that is more integrated. No, they'll bitch about it, but they're not going to do anything about it. There's so much to this. There's so many things. The war on drugs. You know, Richard Nixon started the war on drugs. People think of me, Ronald Reagan and Nancy Reagan, just say no. No, Nixon started the war on drugs. He's the one who put the first policy in place. And at that time, even when they talked to, and you can see films of this. And you can read this on the very White House tapes. There were the smoking gun when it came to Nixon and Watergate, included his plan to lie to the press, to co-opt the police forces all over America, and to eliminate his political enemy, which he defined as black people. He also defined a bunch of hippies and things like that because they were anti-Vietnam War. But the thing about black people is how other white people bought into it, not just hook, line, and sinker. And this is not about white people being scammed. This is about white people who knew this. When they were looking at the White House tapes in order to impeach him and looking for evidence of him being behind Watergate, they heard that. They listened to it. And they did nothing. Crickets. As black neighborhoods were being destroyed from the inside by police, as white people listened to all these arrests happening, and it just reaffirmed their fear and their resentment towards and their anger about and their white supremacy, that they are just so much better than black people. They can do marijuana, they can do cocaine. We do it nice and safely in our homes. We don't commit crimes, but the use of the drugs were criminalized. The policing of the drugs was racist. That's crazy. And even to this day, I remember when crack cocaine first came out. Now, as a professional who was working in the in the field of addiction, I knew that what separated crack cocaine from regular cocaine was the mode of administration. What does that mean? It means that when you cut it, and you literally cut it and make it less potent than the powder form that white people could use and get away with, even though they cook it up themselves and smoke it. Here's the thing. When you cut that, you do cut it, it makes it less. There's less cocaine. It's not a more powerful form of the drug. I'm just going to say that. It wasn't a more powerful, it was a less powerful form. Okay? But when you smoke it, it passes the blood-brain barrier more quickly, which means enters the lungs, enters the brain that quick. Snorting, you snort it, and it goes into your olfactory, it goes into your nose, up in here, it goes into your esophagus, it soaks through your esophagus, it soaks through your throat, okay, through your skin, into the blood, to the heart, to the brain. Slower process, slower curve, less intense, less powerful mode of administration. Black neighborhoods were destroyed because of that policy. And no matter what anyone says, every single time conservatives talked about being tough on crime, that was just more white supremacy. It's just more white supremacy. Because white people could do all kinds of crimes. Again, look at Donald Trump. Look at Jeffrey Epstein. All these white people committing some of the most heinous crimes that you can imagine. They're still out there. Everybody that was on his list, still out there. And no matter what you guys say, no matter how many times you guys scream, they'll still be out there. And the only reason that it's even getting the attention that it's getting is because these little victims, and I'm not trying to minimize it, but they were white. Because if they were anything other than white, not one of you MAGA idiots out there would give a flying fuck about Jeffrey Epstein. As a matter of fact, you'd probably turn him into a hero, just like you did with Trump, just like you did with Steve Bannon, just like you did with Ronald Reagan, just like you want to do still with Richard Nixon, just like you do with FDR. Heroes, people who represent equality. The hell are you fucking talking about? Pfft. Idiotic. And I have to say white people because liberals, you ain't no different. I grew up in this predominantly white neighborhood. Went to one of the best public schools in the country, probably. I'm more than sure somewhere that's been written, wherever. People still believe that whole school district. Best. One of the best of the best. The kind of crap that came out of that school. Oh my God. Oh my God. And again, you can't sit there and tell me that this isn't true because I lived it. You can't tell me that the resentment isn't real. I saw it. You know, the truth is that somebody who grew up in that neighborhood, until I got older and could see the world through slightly different eyes, I believed it all too. Hook, line, and sinker. I was taught to be afraid of black people. I was taught to think that black people were lazy, wanted something for nothing, that in this country, everything is good and fine and well, but these people just want something for nothing. These black people want something for nothing. And then there was the caveat. They would look me straight in the eye and say, but you're different. You're not like them. I wonder how many other black people heard that growing up. I wonder how many other black people believed it. I wonder how many other black people bought into that one, hook, line, and sinker, until they got old enough, maybe somewhere in their teens, maybe after they got to college, and they started to realize, wow, all that stuff is bull. All that crap that I was taught to believe was bull. I wonder how many still buy into the lie to this day. People like maybe a Judge Clarence Thomas or something like that. I don't know. I'm making an assumption there. But actions, behavior is what matters. Not what you say. It's what you do. It's what you have done. There's a lot that people can unpack, but they won't. There's a lot that the media will say, but there's a lot more that it will leave out. There was a lot that liberals were running around here crying over, but it won't be enough. This is the last gasp of white supremacy in this country and on this planet. And the real problem is that so far, nobody is getting to the basic paradigm, the consciousness, the things that are applauded, the things that you stand up for, the things that are like freedom and justice and belief in God, and all of those things that are all based on lies, misinformation, bullshit, just complete and total bullshit. And how that bullshit is still driving the economy, the war machines, the military-industrial complex. Even if you want to bring in the lying about the UFOs, why are they lying about it? Because they want to use the technology to gain a military advantage and have another ways and means of controlling the world. Controlling the world. Even that is delusional as hell. Not delusional because you can't really control the world, but delusional in the sense of, why the hell would you want to? What does that do for you? What is being powerful in this guise because of your ownership of property, because of your ability to manipulate people? What does that give you? What does that make you? Supreme? Makes you better? No. Makes you a pretty fucked up, narcissistic, addicted piece of shit is what it makes you. But everybody wants to be that, don't they? That's what gives them power. So, say goodbye to voting rights. And with that, every other right that's ever been. Welcome back to it being legal. Because all you have to do, if you murder a black person and say, it was a lynching, and instead of it being a legal act, you can invite hundreds and thousands of other white people to have a picnic and watch the lynching happen and cheer as your priests and politicians and lawyers and doctors and police officers applaud this great thing that is so just and the way that God wanted it to be. This is God's plan. For white people to rule the world is God's plan. This is as old as the first massacres of the Cathars, sometime back in the Dark Ages. As old as the witch trials. This is as old as the first Crusades going into the Middle East. This is as old as anything that we could call Western civilization itself. If you're going to fight, if you're one of those people who thinks you really want to fight, one thing's for sure. You cannot fight the result of all this white supremacy unless you're really ready, both externally and internally, to address your own thinking, to address the very constructs that you were raised with and challenge them and heal yourself from them. I say heal yourself because I think that it is a healing that needs to happen. To change some of those thoughts. And one of the most insidious in CBT, we talk about core beliefs. This is the most insidious core belief that there is, right? It is a core belief that has been taught to Americans, all Americans, ever since there was a public school. Now, I can say all Americans, but we also have to put it that when this started to be talked about in the schools, black people weren't allowed in those schools. But where we were, we still were expected to say the same thing. It's called the Pledge of Allegiance. And it ends with this one statement. 2 sentences, I believe. One nation, under God, with liberty and justice for all. That's a lie. America has never been that. And I'll hear people say, both conservatives and Republicans, but it's aspirational. Yeah, it's bullshit until it happens. And it's never happened. And what we really need to face is how much one side, conservatives, want to erase that. They do not want it. It means nothing to them unless it applies only to white people. And then liberals who have had opportunity after opportunity after opportunity after opportunity, who have sat here and watched, just as I have, as all of these things were torn down, erased, chipped at, cracked, until it started to crumble, as we're seeing now, and did nothing, did absolutely nothing. And how both liberal and Republican, educated and uneducated, college educated or not, rich, poor, doesn't matter, because the glue that holds whiteness together, even if there's black people and maybe a few Hispanic people and a couple of Asian people and maybe even one or two Native Americans that get wrapped up and co-opted by that whiteness, the one thing they all have in common is this belief that they have the right to do whatever the hell they want, to whoever they want, whenever they want. And people are just supposed to take it, because that is God's will. So I guess I should say, like, subscribe, whatever, ring the little bells for notifications, whatever they say here. I don't know. But just to end where I started, congratulations to white people everywhere. You did it. You put the uppity niggas back in their place, which is exactly what you've always wanted to do. Have a good night.